Namaskar everyone. Today in this video, I seek to highlight how information asymmetry in the pharmaceutical ecosystem directly impacts affordability, treatment adherence, and the fundamental right to health under Article 21 of Constitution of India. India's pharmaceutical sector as a critical component of the broader Indian healthcare system is often regarded as one of the most advanced and globally integrated ecosystems. A status that was particularly evident during the COVID-19 pandemic, when India simultaneously executed one of the world's largest vaccination drives while also supplying vaccines internationally. This reflects a very strong manufacturing capacity, regulatory coordination, and scientific expertise. Against this backdrop, the key issue under examination in this video is not the sector's capability, but the persistence of information asymmetry arising from fragmented and unintegrated regulatory and market data, which limits citizens' access to actionable information for rational decision making, particularly around the pricing and drug choices. While unified guidelines on ethical marketing of drugs exist, a critical gap remains in understanding their legal enforceability and the extent to which they translate into binding compliance mechanisms. Similarly, my RTI-based insights suggest that state FDAs in some cases exceed the prescribed drug sampling and testing targets, including surpassing 100% testing benchmarks. Yet, the public availability and standardization of sampling plans remain limited. Although FDAs, that is the state regulators, publish list of spurious and not of standard quality drugs and companies, there is still ambiguity regarding the statistical coverage relative to the total universe of the marketed molecule, raising questions about completeness and representativeness of the tested samples, which are taken randomly. Additional gaps are visible in the regulation of fixed dose combinations, FDCs, where only a subset receives formal approval despite widespread market presence. Overall, while the sector is highly dynamic and continuously updated through regulatory notification, the core challenge identified is the lack of a unified, transparent, and a citizen-accessible information framework, the absence of which perpetuates price variability, reduces efficiency in a consumer-level pharmaceutical decision-making. If one carefully examines the regulatory portals such as CDSCO, Central Drug Standard Control Organization, NPPA, National Pharmaceutical Pricing Authority, you will encounter a wide, deeply structured regulatory architecture, including computation methodologies for retail price fixation under paragraph 5 of the DPCO, Drug Price Control Order 2013. You may find judicial interpretations, case laws concerning paragraph 20 of the DPCO, Drug Price Control Order, and the latest one being 2013. Section 7 of the Essential Commodities Act. You will find a national list of essential medicines, including selected approved fixed dose combinations, but they are very few in number as compared to those available in the market. Detailed notification relating to price fixation of individual molecules published through official gazette orders. You may observe that these multiple committees are doing various functions. There are around 32 price monitoring units nationwide. Various advisory and technical committees have been constituted over time, along with extensive minutes of meeting available on the web portal. That's all in the public domain. This reflects a highly detailed and data-driven regulatory ecosystem of pharmaceuticals in India. You will come across reports of Competition Commission of India, IBEF report, various informations given from time to time to CCI, Competition Commission of India. A closer reading and analysis of all these materials reveal both the complexity and the sophistication with which this pharmaceutical pricing and regulation are being handled in India. And one may reasonably appreciate that the regulatory authorities are functioning with a significant institutional intelligence, technical expertise, and policy intent. At the same time, a reflective analysis may lead one to question the degree of fragmentation in information dissemination. The information persists, it's existing, but it's very, very highly fragmented. I mean to say the sector is organized and highly fragmented. Whether the current structure, though robust in design, could be further strengthened through better integration, accessibility of data across the stakeholders, including entities, consumer. And I mean, stakeholder is a broader term which encompasses the entities, the consumers, and everything. In this context, my approach is based on comparative and conceptual ideation drawn from international pharmaceutical regulatory frameworks and prior experience rather than any intent to challenge existing legal or policy frameworks. I do not intend to challenge any regulations or policies such as Pharmaceutical Policy of India or committee reports like Pranab Sen Committee on Drug Pricing. I don't intend to challenge because I don't find any flaw. They are as per international standards and they are framed uh, as best as it could be. Similarly, in this video, I do not seek to dispute regulatory decisions, statutory provisions, or policy choices relating to pricing of a choice of vaccines or essential medicines or categorization of medicine into essential, scheduled, non-scheduled, all of which are based on collective expert medical consultation and parliamentary processes. I want to begin with a simple but powerful question that reflects the everyday reality of millions of patients. If a medical practitioner prescribes a medicine costing around rupees, say 4,000 per month in a chronic conditions, but at the same time, another brand of same medicine exists with the same active ingredient, same composition, same therapeutic effect, and approved under the same regulatory standards, yet cost only rupees 400 to 500. Should the patient not have the right to know this difference and make an informed choice? And more importantly, in a system that directly impacts public health, should such critical information remain fragmented, inaccessible, or difficult to understand for a very person who is consuming the medicine? Before I get deeper into the state of affairs and conceptualizing the flaws or the gaps in enforcement, I want to provoke your thought by a few questions. Just think of, is there any legal or regulatory notification that mandates medical practitioners in India to prescribe medicines by their generic names rather than brand names? If generic prescribing is encouraged by the regulators, do the guidelines exist, the notification taken back, Do they have legal sanctity? Do the guidelines have legal sanctity? Does prescribing a higher priced brand necessarily imply better efficacy, safety, or quality? Or in other words, are patients often paying more for the same therapeutic outcome? Should patients have the right to request a lower cost equivalent medicine? Uh, uh, Considering that multiple brands contain the same API, active pharmaceutical ingredient. If hundreds of brands of the same medicine exist in the market, how can a patient identify which one offers the best balance of quality, safety, affordability? I mean, that's questioning the very existence of branded generics, the value addition. Why does India still not have a single unified national portal that integrates medicine composition, manufacturers, link it to the price ceilings of NPPA, Jan Aushadhi scheme, safety information, and all the existing brand comparisons in one place? Beyond Jan Aushadhi, CDSCO, NPPA, and FTA, that is state regulators, portals, what information systems are actually available to patients and consumers for making informed choices? Should access to drug information be considered a consumer right? Similar to your nutritional food products or nutritional products, how many fixed dose combinations are approved and how many are available in market? It's important to get the statistics. Do all approved fixed dose combinations truly improve patient compliance, therapeutic outcomes, or do some merely represent some commercial innovation than clinical innovation? At what point does a useful fixed dose combination become an irrational combination? And can this irrational combination contribute to antimicrobial resistance, adverse drug reactions, or inappropriate prescribing practices? Should pharmaceutical companies be held more accountable for introducing combinations that have limited clinical justification? What are the statutes, regulations, policy frameworks beyond the Drug and Cosmetic Act, Essential Commodities Act, and DPCO Order 2013 that is shaping the generic pharmaceutical market in India? Can a policy document override a statutory instrument such as Drug Price Control Order, DPCO 2013, or does law ultimately prevail over policy intent? Is healthcare fundamentally a public welfare obligation or an economic marketing activity? If prices of all medicines under the NLEM, that is the list of National List of Essential Medicine 2022, are tightly controlled, would pharmaceutical companies lose incentives to invest and compete? Could extensive price regulation unintentionally reduce market participation and create medicine shortages? This is an important thought to brood on. Would aggressive price control transform the pharmaceutical industry from an innovation-driven sector into a volume-driven sector? Is there a possibility that excessive regulation of branded generics could shift companies towards non-regulated products and reduce attention to essential medicines? Quite possible. When a medicine label mentions a manufacturer, marketer, contract manufacturer, or license holder, who should ultimately be accountable for quality failures, patient safety issues? Can a pharmacist substitute equivalent medicine in the prescription on patient's request by informing the patient or the medical practitioner who prescribes it? Are medicines simply commercial product, or they are fundamentally social goods with ethical obligations attached to them? What are they exactly? Can India achieve a goal of medicines for all without simultaneously ensuring information for all? The final question: if affordable medicines are available, but patients do not know they exist, have we truly solved the problem of access? I request you to ponder over these questions. Try to explore and find the answers not merely from laws, policies, or regulations, but from the perspective of patient, healthcare professionals, industry stakeholders, and society at large. Sometimes most important answers emerge not from what is written, but from what still remains to be connected. India is globally recognized as a pharmacy to the world, and it has developed a vast and complex pharmaceutical ecosystem, which comprises price regulation mechanism, essential medicine list, generic and branded generic medicines, public welfare schemes such as Jan Aushadhi Kendra. The scheme is Pradhan Mantri Bharatiya Jan Aushadhi Pariyojana. Regulatory institutions like National Pharmaceutical Pricing Authority, Central Drug, CDSCO, state drug controllers. These institutions collectively aim to ensure affordability, quality, access to medicine, and India also maintains a system like ceiling price control, retail price fixation mechanism, structured regulatory databases, which together form one of the most extensive pharmaceutical governance framework in the world. And it is too complex. Yet, despite the strong institutional architecture, significant price variations continue to exist for therapeutically equivalent medicines. This raises a fundamental question about why such disparities persist in a system that is already heavily regulated. The answer to a paradox lies in the concept of information asymmetry, because healthcare is not a normal consumer market where the buyer makes independent decisions. Instead, the process is typically involving medical practitioners who prescribe a medicine, a pharmacist who dispenses it, patient who consumes it, which means the patient is not the primary decision maker and often has limited visibility into alternatives that is uh, you know more significant when prescriptions are written using brand names rather than generic name, a practice that continues despite regulatory encouragement by bodies like NMC promoting generic prescribing habits, or the conduct or the ethics of professional conduct. This prescribing of generic or the scientific name of the drug remains uneven in the practice, resulting in a system where a single molecule may exist under dozens or even hundreds of brands, leaving patients unaware of equivalents, price differences, or available alternatives. Again, in the context of branded generics, see the classification when it comes to regulatory classification, let us understand there is scheduled drug, there is essential drug, there is patents, there are off-patent drugs, generics. And this segment of generics is further divided into branded generics and Jan Aushadhi kind of generics, wherein there is no branding. So, in the context of this branded generics and therapeutic equivalence, it becomes important to understand that branded generics, where multiple pharmaceutical companies may sell the same active ingredient, API, active pharmaceutical ingredient, under different brand names, often with differences in packaging, marketing, delivery mechanism, or branding strategies. While the core therapeutic molecule remains the same, this creates a situation where price variation does not always reflect a difference in therapeutic effectiveness. And although there may be legitimate commercial reasons for branding and differentiation, the critical policy question remains whether patients should have clear and accessible information about all therapeutically equivalent options, so that the economic constraints do not prevent them from accessing the appropriate treatment. Again, the complexity arises when the fixed dose combinations come into picture, where two or more active API, active pharmaceutical ingredients, are combined into a single dosage form to improve the compliance, reduce pill burden, provide therapeutic benefits, particularly in chronic diseases such as hyperglycemia, hypertension, HIV, tuberculosis. Uh, However, concerns also exist regarding irrational combinations, lack of sufficient clinical justification in certain cases, increased risk of adverse drug reactions, difficulty in dose adjustment, potential contribution to antimicrobial resistance, which is why regulatory authorities periodically review, restrict, or withdraw certain fixed dose combinations. This reflects a continuous challenge of balancing the therapeutic innovation with patient safety and scientific validation. Many a time, these FDCs, fixed dose combinations, enter in market for price reasons. These FDCs overcome the uh, price bands when get into combination. Then there is a third party manufacturing structure, wherein the contract manufacturers licenses, are they prescribed or are they identified uh, in the label on the label of the medicine? This is another important structural aspect of the pharmaceutical ecosystem. Separation between manufacturing marketing function is one, whereas the manufacturing to contract manufacturing and getting all on records is another one, where one entity may manufacture a medicine, another may brand and market it, distributors may handle the logistics, pharmacist ultimately dispense it to the patients, creating a multiple layered supply chain in which the accountability, transparency can become diluted. As a result, patients and even practitioners may not always know who actually manufactured a medicine. How pricing is determined, whether multiple brands originate from the same manufacturing facility, or who is ultimately responsible in the event of quality concerns. Even though this system itself is not illegal and is widely used across the global pharmaceutical industry, it's not only in India. This is everywhere in the world. Based on my research, which included survey, uh, field observations also, other than the medical literatures, pharmaceutical regulations, economically weaker middle income groups, I found that patients suffering from chronic illnesses such as hyperglycemia, hypertension, cardiovascular conditions, thyroid disorders, They often face a recurring challenge where prescriptions contain branded medicine that are significantly more expensive than available alternatives. And since these diseases require long-term or even lifelong treatment, the cumulative financial burden becomes substantial, often directly affecting treatment adherence. I also observed that while many patients and families are aware of schemes like Jan Aushadhi, they still struggle to connect prescriptions written in brand names with available low-cost equivalents, creating a practical barrier that is not necessarily about availability of medicine, but about availability of usable information, integrated information, and information accessible to the patients. This leads to what can be described as a Jan Aushadhi paradox. The medicine exists, the government scheme exists, and the patient exists, but the information bridge that connects them often does not. Despite the presence of a nationwide network of Jan Aushadhi Kendra and a wide product basket of affordable medicines, uh, I think the annual statement of 2023, they point out more than 8,000 medicines and uh, surg additional surgical products being available through the Jan Aushadhi Kendra. That's a very wide gamut of product. Patients frequently arrive with brand name prescriptions that do not directly map to the available generic equivalents. The pharmacist or patient may not have immediate access to the unified system that clearly translates the prescribed brand name into the equivalent formulation and inform the consumer or pharmacist about the prices, alternatives, and this results in a situation where affordability mechanism exists in theory, but not always effectively accessible in practice due to fragmented information system. Uh, India does have multiple information systems such as NPPA, National Pharmaceutical Pricing Authority database. There is CDSO approved approval portals, uh, Jan Aushadhi Kendra Pharma Sahi Dam application, something like that. Jan Aushadhi applications, state FDA systems, hospital formularies, pharmacopoeia references, private drug information platforms. But these systems operate in isolation. They do not provide a single integrated view of medicine composition, pricing, manufacturer or the contract manufacturer, API supplier, equivalents, public scheme alternatives. As a result, both patient and healthcare provider must navigate multiple fragmented platforms to obtain this basic comparative information. And this is creating inefficiency in a beautiful scheme, very aspirational and ambitious scheme, Jan Aushadhi. And this confusion is an unavoidable is an avoidable barrier. With the information, it could be avoided with the supplement of information uh, accessible at a fingertip, and this will help a decision making. To address this gap, uh, you know, you have to conceptualize a framework. I call it 2M, from manufacturing to metabolism. Background of my screen may be a virtual inverted image, but maybe I post it in the appropriate place so that you can access it. Those who are interested may access it. This proposes a unified pharmaceutical transparency architecture. It's an example. I won't say that it is proposal, but it is, an example which reflects a unified pharmaceutical transparency architecture. And this is based on comparative mapping of the international generic regulatory mechanism. You may find the entire life cycle of a medicine is traceable here. This begins with the medicine layer, covering generic composition, therapeutic category, dosage, fixed dose combination. This extends to the brand layer, including all marketed brands, pricing structure, ceiling prices, Jan Aushadhi equivalent. This continues into the supply chain layer, covering manufacturer, API sources, marketing entities, CNF agents, distributors. Then moves into the access layer, covering pharmacy, hospital availability, finally reaches the patient and outcome layers, covering price comparison tool, substitution options, adherence monitoring, adverse events, real world evidence, with the objective of making the pharmaceutical system intelligible, transparent, and patient friendly. And mind you, this fragmented information could be easily integrated. Every assignment we undertake begins with a vision, mission, and viewpoint. Even though this initiative is a pro bono effort, it is driven by a larger vision to create a transparent, accountable, and patient-centric pharmaceutical ecosystem where every stakeholders from manufacturers to patients can access the reliable and meaningful information about the medicine. The framework illustrated in the background screen of my video, that is 2M, manufacturing to metabolism, reflects a vision by presenting an integrated pharmaceutical transparency and ecosystem. The concept is built around the idea that a medicine's journey should not end at manufacturing or sale, but should extend all the way to therapeutic outcomes and patient metabolism. This framework begins with the manufacturing layer, which captures the origin and creation of medicine, including the API manufacturers, formularies, the formulation units, GMP standards, batch information. GMP standard may include the US FDA or whatever the standards they are following or approval mechanism. Then there would be a progress into the core information layers, which collectively establishes transparency across the pharmaceutical life cycle. This is important because, there are certain medications or medicines which require certain supply chain conditions of temperature. And are these conditions maintained right from manufacturing to metabolism? The traceability is important because if used in intensive care units, the denatured, if the temperature is hampered, will lose the efficacy and threat to life. So it is important in that aspects, I mean to point on the safety aspect and quality aspect by traceability. It is important to clarify that this framework is not directed against the pharmaceutical companies or the industry as a whole, which plays a vital role in innovation, production, employment, healthcare access. Nor does it seek to eliminate branding, restrict competition, or interfere with legitimate market mechanisms. Because transparency does not weaken market, rather it strengthens by enabling informed participation. Competitive systems function more efficiently when all participants have access to complete and meaningful information. Branded generics in India are often priced significantly higher compared to equivalent medicines available at the Jan Aushadhi Kendra, despite containing same therapeutic composition. In course of my research, I requested information via RTI applications, almost 50 applications in last 1 year. I engaged with various stakeholders, including directors, medical experts, to understand the nature of the value addition the lack in the regulatory mechanism or the gap in the regulatory mechanism, uh, value addition being claimed by certain branded products. What does it mean? Uh, the responses largely indicated that beyond packaging, branding, or modified release formulations, SR, sustained release. In some cases, this sustained release is not therapeutic efficacy or enhancement. The question I have here is whether the value addition in such cases is being driven by clinical benefit or primarily by market positioning. Uh, I think the greater engagement by brand owners, product managers, and patient education, compliance support, health awareness may represent a more meaningful form of value creation than in the healthcare ecosystem, rather than inflating the prices just by packaging changes and calling it a value addition or enhancement of therapeutic efficacy. From the constitutional perspective, this issue relates directly to Article 21 of the Constitution of India, which has been interpreted to include the right to health and access to medical care, as well as Article 14, which ensures fairness and non-arbitrariness in access to essential services. Thereby, it raises an important question of whether access to medicine can truly be considered complete if patients do not have meaningful access to information regarding alternatives, pricing structures, therapeutic equivalence. Because in such a scenario, the right to health may exist in principle, but remain incomplete in practical application. I have filed a public interest litigation in the Honorable Supreme Court of India under Article 32 of the Constitution of India, praying judicial consideration of the need for an integrated pharmaceutical information system that consolidates existing regulatory public databases into a single accessible platform. This is aimed at improving transparency, reducing information asymmetry. And when information asymmetry is reduced, most of the problems around this area gets solved. And it enables the healthcare decisions. More importantly, this petition does not challenge existing pharmaceutical laws, pricing frameworks, or regulatory policies such as DPCO or National Pharmaceutical Policy, but instead focuses on strengthening implementation, integration, accessibility of already existing system in the public interest, uh, consistent with the idea that effective governance requires not only sound policy decision, but also efficient execution. It's more about the deficiency in the execution. As a matter of principle, I ordinarily exercise restraint in discussing matters that are sub judice, fully recognizing and respecting the dignity, independence, and sanctity of judicial proceedings. The institutional framework of the judiciary warrants due deference, and it is neither intended nor appropriate to comment on any issues in a matter that may be construed as influencing the adjudicatory process. However, the document which I'm sharing with this video is in the nature of a public interest disclosure. The material placed herein includes the petition and the prayers sought, is a part of public record and may be shared in accordance with the law. In circumstances where the issues raised have a direct bearing on the public health, access to essential medicine, and the welfare of economically vulnerable sections of society, it becomes necessary to place the broader concern in the public domain for meaningful awareness of informed decision. The purpose of this disclosure is not to interfere with or prejudice any judicial determination, but to contribute to the constructive public disclosure on a systemic challenges affecting healthcare accessibility, particularly the question of whether the right to affordable medicine must also necessarily encompass the right to accessible and reliable pharmaceutical information. Here I want to disclaim that the contents of this video and any accompanying documents which I am sharing or any other materials are shared purely for informational and public awareness purpose in the context of the public interest litigation which was filed under Article 32 of the COI, praying for an integrated pharmaceutical information to improve transparency, accessibility, informed healthcare decisions. This submission does not challenge any existing pharmaceutical law, pricing framework, regulatory policies, including the DPCO 2013 or the National Pharmaceutical Policy. This is intended solely to focus on strengthening the implementation, integration, accessibility of already existing regulatory systems in the public interest. I want to respectfully clarify that this material again is not intended to influence any ongoing institutional or judicial proceedings in any manner. And due regard is given to the dignity, independence, and sanctity of the judicial process. The disclosure is made in good faith as part of public record for lawful public disclosure on issues concerning healthcare, access, information transparency. Also, let me clarify that here the content does not constitute any medical advice or legal advice. For professional legal assistance, I remain available. Ultimately, India has already built strong pharmaceutical institutions, regulatory frameworks, welfare schemes, but the next frontier is integration. The challenge is no longer simply about producing more medicine or regulating prices more strictly, but about ensuring that information travels with the medicine itself across its entire journey from manufacturing to metabolism. Because when affordable and effective medicine exists, but patients cannot easily identify or access them due to fragmented information system, the promise of healthcare access remains incomplete. Therefore, the future of pharmaceutical reform in India may depend not only on manufacturing strength or price regulation, but on building a transparent, unified, citizen-centric information architecture, where transparency itself becomes the missing prescription in the healthcare system. This is my attempt to bring attention to the everyday realities of patients with a deep respect for existing system and a sincere hope that access to healthcare becomes easier, not only in cost, but also in understanding. I think healthcare reform is not only about regulating medicines, but about ensuring that every citizen can understand and access them with dignity, clarity, and ease. Thank you.